In today's video, we're going to talk about e-collars. We're going to talk about are they good, are they bad, and when should you use them, and of course, when should you not use them. So let me start by saying I'm not a huge e-collar trainer. There's some trainers out there that put an e-collar on every single dog. I don't train like that, and I just don't see the use case. So, and I'm also going to, let me back up a little bit. Years ago, I've been training dogs since '06, and years ago, I hated e-collars with a passion. So when I first started training, I saw e-collars, I thought they were bad, right? I thought they were absolutely cruel. I thought they were used because people were lazy and because people didn't have the dog's welfare in mind and they just wanted kind of the easy button. So I stayed away from them completely. And years went by, and I don't know how many years, but years later, I had a Mastiff mix we'd rescued. He was big, like 150 pounds or so. And he was a really good dog, always listened. And we were hiking on a farm in central Iowa, and it was windy that day. Like, if you've been on a farm in, farm country in the middle of a windy day, you know what it's like. If you haven't, it's crazy. The wind whips. It is so hard. It'll carry your voice to where you can't hear someone 20 feet from you. I learned this lesson the hard way. My dog was running, just being a dog, having fun. And all of a sudden he saw a deer and he took off after it. He's a dog, right? That's what they do. And I called him. And if he could hear me, the dog would listen no matter what, but he couldn't hear me. So he took off running after the dog, or after the deer, full speed. He's running and I'm like chasing after him looking like a maniac, right? I'm like, his name was Smalls and I'm like, Smalls, I'm screaming. And then I became scared, right? Because I loved that dog and I was worried about losing him, right? Him getting too far away, him getting hit by a car, who knows what. And finally, I don't know how long it had been, felt like forever. He turned for whatever reason, and I'm like way behind him because he's way faster. I'm like, I don't know, half a mile, maybe not half a mile, quarter mile back, whatever, really long way. And I'm like waving like a maniac, and he turns and he sees me and he freezes. And so I gave him his signal for come, and he turned and started coming to me because he was a good dog, right? He always listened. And he got about halfway, and then he stopped and he laid down. I could see he was in pain. So I got up to him, and he'd hurt his leg. So I picked him up. You can see I'm not this like huge, powerful person, right? I picked him up and I carried him back and it sucked, right? He couldn't walk. It was horrible, right? It was a lot of dog for me to carry. I got him back there. He ended up being okay. No permanent damage to the leg, but that was an eye opener to me. And it really showed me that, hey, there's got to be a better way, right? Otherwise, I just can't trust a dog who's that far away. And that really restricts their ability to be a dog, right? He was only started maybe 50 yards from me, right? Not that far away, but it was just a windy day. So I thought there's got to be another way. And I started looking more into e-collars. And what I did is, as I looked more into e-collars, I learned a lot. And my previous association with e-collars, and I'd seen some bad e-collar trainers out there. And by bad, what I mean is they were, what I said earlier, kind of lazy and used it as the easy button. They put it on and just corrected dogs. But I took the time and I watched some good e-collar trainers. And it just it blew my mind because I realized they were not being harsh. They weren't yelling. They weren't like cranking these things up high and like really correcting the dogs. The dogs were happy. The dogs were training and they were enjoying it. And I was like, it blew my mind. Absolutely. And I was an experienced dog trainer already, right? I had just stayed away from these tools and I saw it and it changed everything. So I started using e-collars more and I realized they are not the tool that some people make them out to be. Now, could they be used that way? Yes, they could, right? They could be used in a bad way, but so could many other things. So this e-collar, and I'm going to put this on in just a minute and show you how it works and show you what the corrections look like. But the e-collar is what people will call an aversive, meaning the dog doesn't enjoy it, right? It's meant to be, a correction, just a quick snap, right, to catch their attention. People will tell you aversives are bad, right? And aversives could be bad, right? But think about what an aversive is. It's something the dog doesn't like. So could a cloth collar be an aversive? Yes, right? If your dog is pulling on leash and you use pressure to stop them and bring them back, that cloth collar is an aversive. Can a gentle leader, which is billed as like the ultimate PC dog training tool, could that be aversive? Yeah. Why do you think dogs stop pulling, right? They put it on, they pull, and it turns their head and they're like, oh, that wasn't very comfortable. So they stop pulling as much when it's on, right? It was an aversive. If it wasn't, if they loved it, they would keep pulling, right? If they thought, wow, this feels good when I pull, it would encourage them to do it more. The word no is an aversive, right? If you tell your dog no in a stern manner to try to stop them from doing something, that's an aversive. So the idea that an e-collar is bad, like de facto bad because it's an aversive is just silly because humans, use aversives with each other and with dogs all the time. So it's really about the level of aversive, right? Is it very cruel? Is it intense? Is it mean-spirited? Those are problems, right? But just because it's meant to not be a great thing for the dog doesn't make it bad, because that's what correction is about, right? There has to be a way to kind of break their focus and correct them. So let's talk about what the e-collar is like, because I know in your mind right now, if you've never seen one before, you're thinking shock collar, right? And I can tell you, I absolutely hate that term. And I probably used that back in 2006, 7, 8, maybe even 2009, because in my mind, that's what they did. They shocked dogs, right? This is not a shocking tool. It doesn't have that kind of power. So let me show you what it does. Let me turn it on here. This is a Dogtra. It's a great unit. Okay. So first, I don't know if you can hear it, but you can certainly see it bouncing across the desk there. That's the vibrate function. The vibrate function, or the pager, is awesome. That could have let me call that Mastiff from 50 yards away. I'd push it, he'd feel it. If I trained him properly, which I would have, he would know that meant come, and we wouldn't have had a problem. He actually went deaf. He lived to be a great age for a Mastiff. He went deaf when he was older. I had him trained on an e-collar. It was awesome. He could be outside being a dog, and I could push the pager. He knew it meant to check in for me, and then I could call him inside. So pager function is absolutely awesome. Now, e-collars also have a correction function, right? So let's talk about what that's like. So e-collars, a good e-collar has many different levels. Now you can see this is snug on me. You have to make good good contact with an e-collar. That's one of the biggest issues, is when people have them on too loose. But so it's nice and snug, so it's making contact. This goes from 0 to 127. 0, cannot feel. 127, very unpleasant, and everything in between. So I'm going to start this at a 1. So you can see there's a dial there and a little screen. So it's at a 1, and I'm going to push this button on the side and do a 1. I can't feel a thing whatsoever, so I'm going to do a 2. Nothing. And I do this, we find the right working level for a dog. We work with the client. I'm at a 3, still nothing. And we start very low with the dog. 4, nothing. 5, nothing. Okay, 7. First one I felt. Just like a little tingle. So certainly doesn't hurt. Not even the same level as a pinch, just a tingle. Okay. 8, I can feel, definitely doesn't hurt. So here, 8. I don't know if you can see a little flex there. I go to the chiropractor. I've got a bum shoulder just from life, I guess, and they use a TENS unit on me. The TENS unit is, I don't know, a lot more powerful than this. So when I have the TENS unit on, it'll like kind of twitch my shoulder, and supposedly it's good for me, relaxes the muscles. I don't really know how that works, but supposedly it's great, right? And every time they do it, it's like that. This 8 right here is just like much less than that. It's just very much like a little tingle. This is a working level for many dogs, 8. And, in even dogs that you'd picture as like tough dogs, like German Shepherds, German Shepherds are not big, bulletproof, super tough dogs. A lot of times they're very sensitive. A lot of German Shepherds are working on a 7, 8, 9. So you need to dial in the working level and understand how it works. And you also need to feel it on yourself, right? You cannot put this on your dog without putting it on yourself first. Now, the pager function, right now, I can feel it, right? Super easy to feel. So the beauty of it is, picture your dog is running outside. When you've trained them properly, you push this and they're like, what? What do you need? And they're conditioned that they look for you and they get a ton of praise as they come over. So this pager function is awesome to the dog. It means, yes, I'm gonna come to you, you're gonna praise me, and I'm gonna get a reward for that. So that's how we start finding a working level. And let me turn this off so I don't drain the battery for no reason. So that's how we start finding the working level with an e-collar. And I always like clients to feel it themselves, and then we start finding the level for the dog. Now, the level of contact matters. You can see I'm not a dog, right? I don't have really thick fur all over me. And, even a lot of dogs, some have very thin coats, like, picture a Pit or an American Bulldog or something. Some have very thin coats like those two, but some have very thick coats like a German Shepherd, an Akita, whatever. You have to make good contact. You have to spend some time. So the number one problem I see with e-collars is people not making good contact, and it's sporadic. So I could feel the 8, it was the same every time. If I had really thick fur and it was just barely making contact, what could happen is it's on an 8, I feel nothing, I feel nothing. You turn it up to a 10, I feel nothing. I move, it shifts, and now you're at a 12, and I'm like, whoa, that was much different than what happened earlier. That's a problem. So if you use an e-collar, you need to really make sure that you have good contact. I'm going to put some links in the description for some better contact points than these that really help with that. Some of the downsides to e-collars is, one, they have to be really tight in order to work. So the extensions that we're going to show you and we'll put in the description help a lot, because then you can put it on looser. Now, let's talk about kind of some worries with an e-collar. So I know I've heard people say, like, I don't want to electrocute my dog. I don't want to electrocute your dog either, right? Nobody does. Well, no one who's not a monster, I guess. So An e-collar does not electrocute your dog. It does not have that level of power. Nowhere close to that. You cannot hurt your dog on an e-collar. Now, can you scare them? Yes, absolutely. You can scare the dog on an e-collar, but you can scare your dog accidentally many ways, right? If you have an 8-week-old dog and they pee in the house and you scream, no, bad dog, you're going to terrify them, right? So you can scare the dog with, voice. You could scare them with an e-collar. You could scare them on a cloth collar, for sure. Dog pulls, you yank really hard, you could scare them on that. So you need to make sure you're not scaring a dog with it. They need acclimated properly, but you cannot hurt your dog with it. The only, real issue to worry about with an e-collar is if you leave it on too long, it's not great for the skin, kind of like a pressure sore, especially if you have it cranked tight and especially if their skin is wet and if they're swimming and it's just sitting there for hours, it can leave like little sores. I've never had that happen to a dog in my care, but I've seen pictures, so it is true. Easy to prevent. I mean, first of all, I never have an e-collar on dogs for hours, so that's why I've never had it happen to a dog in my care. If you're like boating with your dog or hiking and you have it on for 12 hours, just adjust it. Every couple hours, just move it an inch and you're never going to have an issue. But know why you're using an e-collar, right? So I said at the start, I don't use an e-collar with every dog. So now let's talk about how we use an e-collar. And I want to be clear here, and I want you to really think through something. I never, ever, ever, ever teach with an e-collar. So think about that. I don't ever teach with an e-collar. That to me is a huge distinction. So if you call me over and you say, Matt, I need help with my dog, and I get to your house and your dog's like a lunatic, right? Running around the house, barking and jumping and stealing stuff off the counter and leaping at me and crazy on leash, you know what I'm not going to say? Hey, let's get your dog on an e-collar. Not a chance. Absolute 0% chance I'm going to say that. What we're going to do is we're going to teach. We have to teach right from wrong. We have to adjust the lifestyle. If your dog's not getting the right amount of exercise and the right amount of training on a daily basis, why would we put an e-collar on him? That makes no sense and that's not fair. So we're going to teach your dog heel. We're going to teach him out or drop it if that's a problem. We're going to teach him not to jump, not to bark. We're going to do all of that with a leash and collar. Once we've done all of that, if you still have problems, in the house, could we use an e-collar there? Yeah, we could, right? But that's pretty uncommon. Most of the time we don't need it. Generally speaking, I'm using an e-collar for come. And once again, I'm not coming to your house and you say, hey, Matt, my dog doesn't come when called. And I'm like, awesome, let's get an e-collar on him and we'll fix it right now. That's not how it works. We're going to go out with a long line and we're going to train your dog on a long line and we're going to work on come that way first. And years ago, that's all I did. That's the only way I trained dogs on come was with a leash at first and then a long drag leash in the yard. And it worked really well. But what I did see is people don't love long lines, and for good reason. So there's some downsides to long lines for come. One is it's dragging through the yard. It's pretty much a guarantee it's going to get covered in dog poop, right? At some point in time, it's going to go through it. You're going to pick it up and it's nasty and you're going to think, I hate this long line, right? Or it's going to be wet, and we all know why it's wet because it went through a puddle of pee. So long lines have their downside. They also have a danger component to them. If your dog is running full speed and they do loops, a couple loops around a tree and take off the other way, that long line is now attached to the tree. If they hit the end as hard as they can, that's dangerous. And I don't just mean like dangerous, like they could, get a little scrape, like they could legitimately hurt themselves. It's a big problem. So with a long line, you have to use it, carefully and safely. So we start with a long line. But what I saw over the years is my long line clients were like, I don't know, let's say roughly 80% successful at true off-leash come to where they could go, to a field and trust their dog off-leash. And it wasn't because the method didn't work. It's because they didn't enjoy the long line, right? It wasn't a fun process. It got covered in poop. They didn't have a long enough one. Like if your dog's going to be 100 yards away, your long line needs to be more than 100 yards, right? Because if it's a foot away from you and your dog's running, it's useless, right? You need to be able to reach it. So you would need a very long line or a giant fenced-in area, which most people don't have. So when I moved to e-collar training, what I saw is my clients became 99.9%. And I'm just making up that number. I don't remember really ever having a client that worked with an e-collar and couldn't get off-leash come when they put the effort in, right? Not everyone put the effort in and actually finishes training, but anyone who does and actually works on it gets their dog trained off-leash. That's the goal of this, and that's the beauty. That's what an e-collar is all about, right? An e-collar is about that off-leash freedom for a dog to be a dog, for your dog to get the chance to run and to be a dog. So now if you came to me and said, I will never, ever, ever have my dog outside of this fenced-in yard off-leash, do I need an e-collar? I would say no, right? Now, if you have time and you have the money, it'd be a good idea to train him on one. Why not, right? Because what if his leash pops off one day? Right? Or what if someone leaves the front door open and your dog hasn't learned, manners at the door? So there's still some use cases there, but it's not, it's not needed in that scenario, right? I think it's better, but it's not needed. To me, these become really needed when you want your dog truly off leash. And in my opinion, you should want that for your dog, right? That is like the absolute most, joyful a dog can be, right? Running free, having fun, getting the chance to be a dog, and this can allow you to do it. Now, as you watch this video, your takeaway should not be Matt Covey said get an e-collar. I don't want that to be the takeaway, right? You need to think about, does it make sense for your dog? Does your dog have the baseline of training to even be ready for an e-collar? And are you going to use it properly? And by use it properly, you need to learn, right? You either need to work with a good trainer who can help you with it, or watch some really good YouTube videos, someone showing you how to use this, because it's not just put it on and correct the dog. If you do that, they're not going to understand it. They're going to be scared by it. And there's a lot of things that could go wrong. A picture of your dog is, 20 feet from you. You say, come, they don't do it. And you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to push this button now and I'm going to correct them. And they happen to be standing by their ball and maybe they were going for it. And you push that button, even if it doesn't hurt a lot, even if it's just uncomfortable, they might think, oh, that ball's kind of scary, right? And they might walk away from the ball and you might think, hey, job well done. And the next day your dog doesn't go near the ball. You're like, what's going on? That could be the problem, right? So you need to think about your method for how you use this. If you're working with a trainer and their answer to everything is turn the e-collar up really high, that's a huge red flag. Your dog should not be scared of this tool. When I get this out with my dogs, or when I get this out with a client's dog, they're like, like that wiggle, like, yes, I know what this means. I get to go train. And we've already done so much training that when we start working with this, our corrections are very few and far between. And they're not a correction at 70, 80, 90, 127. They're at like 10, 12, maybe 20. They're enough to be just like a pinch to the neck to really get the dog's attention, for them to look at me, and then I can say, hey, come. And now they actually do it. So that's what this is all about. If you decide to use an e-collar, do your research, try it on yourself first. If you have questions, let us know. We would absolutely love to help you with your dog.